Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Joint Subcommittee to study pandemic response and preparedness. I'm Lee Ware, and I will be chairing today in the absence of our Chairman, Senator Survell, who is out of the country. But welcome to all of you who are here with us presently in this room, and those of you that may be watching online. We will proceed as best we can, obviously with the season upon us, Easter, Christmas, and so forth. We will be a little bit shorthanded. In fact, we have gotten late word that we may even not quite make a quorum, which would prevent us from taking formal action. But we'll keep you updated as we go. In the meantime, what I'd like to start by doing is having each of you just briefly introduce yourselves, and we'll go right down the row, and your connection with being with us today. So if we can start on my far left-hand side.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Josh Humphreys. I'm the designee for the Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. But I'm one of the deputy secretaries within the Secretariat, so happy to be here today on behalf of Secretary Cole.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. John Littell, I'm the Secretary of Health and Human Resources. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Barbara Favola, and I represent the 40th Senate District, which is completely contained within Arlington County, and I do chair the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee in the Senate, and I'm pleased to be here.
Very good. I'm Lee Ware. I will represent, beginning in January, the 72nd House District, which includes the counties of Amelia, Nottoway, and Powhatan, and a portion of Chesterfield County.
Delegate Bobby Orrock, currently representing the 54th District, Carolina and Spotsylvania, and also proud to be able to say that I'm in my 50th year of volunteer EMS service, so I have a little different perspective on this response.
And I'm Brian Yates, Higher Education, Liberty University.
Hi, I am Deputy Secretary of Education, Emily Ann Gullickson, here on behalf of Secretary Gadara.
Deputy Secretary Jason Powell, here as Secretary Cummings designee.
Carl Haid, Executive Secretary for the Supreme Court of Virginia.
Well, thank you, and welcome to all of you who are here with us today, and any of you who are following this online. You'll see that the order of business is as follows. We will get an update on the status of this committee from Amigo Wade, who directs our Division of Legislative Services, after which there'll be a presentation by Stephanie Murphy, who has come on behalf of Tidal Basin Government Consulting to talk about this, and then about what her company is able to provide in assisting us in looking over what we intend to do. When that is complete, I will ask if any of you have observations to make or things that you'd like to say about our committee's work and how we are going to proceed. And one other thing I will mention, it's obviously tentative depending on whether we reach a quorum, but should we fail to reach a quorum this time, I've spoken briefly with Mr. Wade, and I think probably the best procedure would be to meet either on Monday or Tuesday of the week that we could reconvene in session. Tuesday has some virtues speaking for it, so be thinking about that if for some reason we do not reach a full quorum. That said, let me turn to Amigo Wade. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Co-Chairman. So what I want to do over the next few minutes is to sort of give you a, they have those things, a montage, when you're trying to catch up after at the beginning of a television show season. That's what I'm going to try to do now. As you know, that the resolution was passed during the 2022 session, and the idea is to review several components of the Commonwealth's response to the pandemic. It also included, it was to be a 2-year study, and it included some funding to hire a consultant. The original deadline for the report was September the 1st, 2023. The first meeting, for a lot of reasons of the committee, of the Joint Subcommittee, was not held until the 27th of April in 2023. And it was basically an organizational meeting, and you all might recall you broke yourselves up into 3 different subcommittees to be able to receive and work on recommendations as they came in. It was also realized at that point that it just wasn't enough time to do a thorough study between that April date and September 1st. So a budget amendment was offered that really did 2 things. It would have extended the date till September the 1st of 2024, and it also would have carried forward the funding that was allocated into the next fiscal year. Again, there was a timing problem. The budget was not approved until the 14th of September, but that amendment was included in the budget. So now the end date of the study is September the 1st, 2024. So we did get that, and the funding did carry over. So Legislative Services still has access to the funding to pay on behalf of the Joint Subcommittee. Now, while we were waiting, as the budget negotiations were going on, we did 2 things working with the co-chairs. First, we thought we could use the time to issue what in procurement is called a request for information. And basically, we thought we could get some information from possible potential qualified providers, as well as kind of getting a better understanding to help the Joint Subcommittee to sort of get your arms around what you would be looking at. We issued the RFI on the 7th of June, and it closed on July 23rd. We posted on the DLS website, but we also went through EVA, which is the statewide system that General Services monitors. And our idea was to get the word out to as many people as possible. We did get one response, and that was from Tidal Basin Government Consulting LLC. The other thing that we did was in looking at the need to have some possible flexibility and working again with the co-chairs, we were able to secure an exemption from the Public Procurement Act for the Joint Subcommittee in terms of hiring the consultant. Now, typically what we would do is whoever is the chair, if it's a senator, we would go to to the chair of rules to get the exemption. If it's a delegate, we would go to the speaker. Since we had co-chairs, we got the exemption signed by both the speaker and the chair of Senate rules to make sure that you all had a very clear exemption. And what that does is it gives you some flexibility in terms of moving forward. Now, as I said, we did get the one response, and that was from Tidal Basin. They are here today to present what they provided in terms of their response, and you're at the point now with that exemption to really look to see if you would want to secure Tidal Basin as the consultant, which might be what, if we don't get a quorum today, you can look at your next meeting. So are there any questions in terms of that update? It wasn't a very good montage. I should have had some music and maybe some smoke or something.
Any questions from members of the commission? And one thing I probably should also note is I believe Delegate Freitas is online observing and participating from a distance. Delegate Freitas, are you listening? We don't hear you presently, but we'll check back with him and make sure whether or not he is with us.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. We do have, as the next item on the agenda, Stephanie Murphy is here from Tidal Basin. If you have no further questions for me, she can present.
Very good. Ms. Murphy, it is a pleasure to have you with us today. I appreciate your company's proposal and glad to have you here to give us a little bit of background. I understand from a brief conversation we had beforehand that you have worked with a number of other states in this regard. Perhaps that'll be part of what you present, but we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who are able to be here or online as well. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to provide you with information about how we can help support the subcommittee on doing an after-action in-depth study and an analysis, generating a report Just a little bit about us. We'll get into that through the presentation, a little bit about me, but then really the meat and potatoes will be how we will help you all, as well as the subcommittees that have been broken down, go across the Commonwealth to get a really good after-action report. So today's agenda, we'll be looking at obviously some basic introductions of myself as well as my company, and throughout we'll talk about the team members. We'll also talk about why Tidal Basin, understanding that there are a lot of different providers out there. We were fortunate enough to be the one to submit, but we're going to hopefully I'll give you a good reason why we should be the one to do it. We've done this many, many times. We'll also talk a little bit about our explanation and overview of the response that we provided and how we're going to do these things. The recommendation of the time frame, given that we have a new schedule and the anticipated adjustment to our schedule as well, and how we're going to execute that, and then how we'll engage with the subcommittee, different elements, and then any questions that you all may have. So we'll get started. So as said, my name is Stephanie Murphy. I'm the Vice President at Tidal Basin for Preparedness, Resiliency, and Emergency Management. What that really means is we help organizations, whether it's government, private sector, it can be universities, colleges, critical infrastructure providers such as airports, hospitals, healthcare systems, prepare pre-event for a disaster. But other parts of our company also help with the response as well as recovery and mitigation efforts. So we are able to provide a full lens and a full spectrum of input, not only from my team who's going to be a part of this project, but also as part of other aspects of our company who can come in and who have decades of experience. I've been with the company for about 5 years now, but prior to that, I've been an emergency management practitioner in the government field. I was at the local level, actually up in Arlington County, serving the Arlington County Office of Emergency Management for several years. I started my career in public safety, so law enforcement and fire, as well as EMS out in California. I was with the U.S. State Department, traveling to all of our embassies overseas, conducting trainings and exercises, as well as with FEMA on a national incident management assistance team as the planning section chief. And at that time, the Administrator Criswell, was our team lead at the time, so I had the pleasure of working under her. So not only do I have emergency management experience, but the team that I hire and bring on are emergency management practitioners. So you'll see the organization of those team members as well and the wealth of their knowledge. So why Tidal Basin? Why us? I could say many, many, many things, and that would take a very long time, in my opinion, but I think there's some really wonderful reasons why our company. So we are an all-hazards, comprehensive emergency management company, as I explained before. We are able to provide services that have a lot of depth in expertise from our people who work with us and for us. We are also a company that is nimble and able to pivot as needed. So we are able to bring in subject matter experts depending on the needs of the project, whether it's a long-term project or a short-term project. And as we identify issues that come up or topic areas or focus areas, such as in an after-action report such as this, we're able to bring in colleagues to help really get in depth and help us with technical reviews, help us with insights, help us with their own experiences, especially during COVID. The other thing we do too is we do real-world after-action reporting. We've done multiple after-action reports for COVID-19 at the state level, as well as regional levels, as well as local county levels. Not only here on the East Coast, but throughout the country. I have a map that will show you some of that, so we'll get into that in a few minutes. But we also work on different after-action reports for non-COVID related types of incidents. The most recent, it's been wildfires out in Colorado as well as in California, but there's hurricanes that we can participate in, as well as human-caused types of issues, or any sort of technological types of issues. So utility outages, cybersecurity events, things like that. We also help our clients prepare for those things with planning, training, and exercising, as well as response. So we worked with a state to assist with COVID response. The reason why this is important is I think it gives our team members a really good understanding about not only how to create recommendations based on areas of improvement that we identify, but we actually understand what it means to implement those tasks that we identify, versus other types of companies may have wonderful staff members on hand, but they may have never worked in the field or have very little field experience. So our team are actual practitioners who have had to implement recommendations in their own after-action reports for their own programs. We also serve our communities as recovery experts, so helping our communities after a disaster with all of the federal funding that's out there. So as you can see, over $40 billion in federally funded disaster programs, not only in the short-term recovery, but as well as long-term economic stability and growth and rebuilding for communities to ensure resilience. So we deal with, obviously, preparedness, response, the recovery aspects, and then mitigating so that we can help ensure our communities, not only here in the Commonwealth, but throughout the country, are better prepared should something happen again. So my team, we lovingly call ourselves PREM, the Preparedness, Resiliency, and Emergency Management Team. So you may hear that acronym as you engage with us. These are just a few highlights of things that we do. You can see it there, from planning, training, and exercising, after-action reporting, as well as program assessments and gap analysis. What's really important about this, again, is we do the full spectrum of ensuring our clients or our projects or those who we serve are able to be as prepared as possible, looking at their capabilities. So we do what's called capabilities-based planning, and we also incorporate this into our after-action reporting. So instead of ensuring that a local jurisdiction, a county, a region, or a state are prepared for a specific type of incident, we take a look at what are the capabilities broadly that you should be able to do to manage any sort of incident, all hazards that may come your way. And that's a much better way to deal with things such as sheltering or communication or command and control versus only focusing on a terrorism event or only a hurricane, things like that. So as you can see, we do have a wealth of knowledge. This is just in the last few years. We've pulled a smattering of after-action experience. We've worked coast to coast as well as in Hawaii. We have all sorts of state clients in all of our other program areas, but this map in particular just shows our recent after-action report experience. Currently, we have the most recent is the state of Hawaii for COVID-19. We did their after-action report. We also did the state of Michigan, who did their after-action report as well, and we're currently engaging with the state of New Hampshire for their after-action report. And all of these take about 12 months, which is why I know that extension that is on the table is very beneficial. As of right now, if there is no extension, it would be about a 9-month program, which having our team, we are prepared, we're flexible, and we can absolutely do what needs to be done within that time period. But I'm all in favor a little bit more time so we can have a little bit more breadth and depth to what we're able to do. We've also gone as long as 15 months as well for some of these things. Some of the other things that we look at is incorporating pandemic planning with some of those states. So those are a lot of the recommendations, is how do we ensure that we improve on the front end with our states, that they're better prepared organizationally across departments. And every department might have some different needs or different focus areas and different topic areas. So our overview of our response and explanation we'll talk about next. So I'll start with our project organization and our team members. These are the high-level team leads that will be a part of the project. We will also engage with other various subject matter experts that may not be listed here, and we may bring in at various times throughout the project to ensure we're accomplishing what the needs are and we get great focus areas. So as you can see, we have a lovely grouping of folks here. I myself will be the project executive on this project. What that means is I engage at a high level, not only with our team working the project, our project manager, Ms. Michelle Burnett, but also with Amigo. We also have another point of contact that we'll deal with, as well as the subcommittee and any of the members. If there's any positive things, any issues that need to be resolved, any questions, any pivoting at a high level, I make sure that on behalf of Tidal Basin, we're able to be there for you. Our project manager, Ms. Michelle Burnett, comes from the state of Rhode Island. So she has been in state government for quite a while. She's been with our company for a few years, and she has run the Michigan project, COVID AAR. She did that as well, and then she leads up as project executive the New Hampshire AAR that they're doing there. We have our deputy project manager, Miss Jess Henry. She is the project manager for New Hampshire as well, so we also thought she would be a good fit here. She comes from state government at Rhode Island as well. I not only have obviously about 25 years of experience, Michelle has 20 plus in government, and Jess has about 10 plus. So we have, again, that wealth of knowledge of emergency management practitioners who have done after-action reports for a very long time, and we can be objective to provide you with results that are necessary to ensure that we get really good recommendations to help the Commonwealth move forward with improvements. Some of the subject matter experts that will engage, Dan Craig is our CEO of Tidal Basin. He started the company back in 2006. He is a former FEMA administrator as well as very high up in FEMA working recovery, lots of major incidents. He actually came on board right before 9/11 with FEMA, so a lot of wealth of knowledge up there. We have offices up in Alexandria as well, and our company name, Tidal Basin, comes from him seeing the Tidal Basin up in DC one morning, and so he did name it after that. So you're curious why the name Tidal Basin. Carlos Castillo, he has a wonderful background not only with the American Red Cross, but he comes from the fire service out in Miami-Dade and was one of the first members of Urban Search and Rescue back when it was first started. He also served in FEMA and took over after Dan left, so wealth of knowledge there. Mark Misjak, and Carlos is our Chief Development Officer here at the company. Mark Misjak is our COO. He comes from FEMA as well and has a wealth of knowledge in individual assistance as well as contact centers, call centers, case management, so dealing more on the individual side with FEMA. So again, we have folks like that. We also have other people on the team who are regional administrators who come from state level government as subject matter experts. And then some of the other team members who are going to be leading some of the efforts, we are aligned with the subcommittee breakdown. However, we did split out healthcare and emergency management, although we will be reporting back in those topic areas to the one subcommittee. But we do have Angela Lawson will be heading up our government and regulations as our team lead. Carrie Evans, with a wonderful background of healthcare systems, is going to be leading that. She's actually leading an after-action report for Ramsey County Public Health right now. Kimmy Scott is an emergency manager from California that we've brought on board, and she has a wealth of knowledge not only in county level emergency management, but tribal. And she's also very interested in preserving cultural and natural resources during disaster. So a lot of great knowledge there, and she'll be focused on emergency management. And Emily Castor, she's out in Maine. She has county level, but she's also working for our client, the state of Maine, with them on cybersecurity planning as well as implementation. And she has a wealth of knowledge in education as well. So she'll be our team lead for that. So that's the project team that I wanted to make sure you knew and were comfortable with. What we'll get into now is our actual project methodology. So how are we actually going to accomplish this for you? And I'm just going to be giving you a very high level few slides about this, about our process. And if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer those. But one of the things we look at is what's called a continuous improvement process. This is a FEMA-guided program that we utilize to ensure that we get the most bang for the buck out of what we're going to be doing. And it involves 4 major aspects and elements: discovery, validation, resolution, and evaluation. So what we're really doing is we're looking to build capacity, help with that self-evaluation. We'll help guide through to get that self-evaluation, ensure continuous improvement, and monitor the completion of improvement items, and to be able to share those insights. So one of the biggest things that will be important for us to work with the subcommittee moving forward after this project as well is we don't want the improvements that we recommend to go by the wayside, and understanding that staff for the subcommittee and even yourselves are incredibly busy. So we oftentimes recommend then a team to specifically look at ensuring that improvement planning goes from the beginning, identifying who should be doing the improvements, where it should be assigned, following up, and then making sure that these items get closed out and resolved. So So how we approach a project, and we do this with every client, it's a proven system that works really well. It allows us to do manageable chunks of the project that engages you all as members in digestible pieces and parts, because more so than many of our clients, you all are incredibly busy and have a lot going on. So what we don't want to do is waste anybody's time. We want to give you manageable chunks of items so you have an awareness about where the project is, what information we're providing, and where it's going. And so we do that through this formula here. It's a 3-phased project. We start with your project initiation, and that really kicks off the project. Then we actually do the data gathering, the after-action interviews, surveys, we review documentation, and we start to do the analysis. And then we go into our actual after-action development and finalization, which comes to a comprehensive after-action report and improvement plan. So throughout that process, the continuous improvement planning falls into all of this. So discovery really is in that project initiation and after-action interviews, surveys, and documentation, so phase 1 and phase 2. We also combine our validation with phase 2 and phase 3, which is that after-action development and finalization. Then we deal with resolution, making sure that we're resolving what we're going to do, and that really goes into phase 3, and then doing the evaluation elements. So quite quickly, phase 1, this is where we get all of our ducks in a row, make sure that we have the expectations identified from you to us, so that we have a thorough understanding about who should be a part of the teams, who should we be interacting with, where do we want to go, what documents should we be looking at, what departments. Now, we have the list. We have the list ready. We have the recommendations that we will provide about things we need and where we think we should be going. So it's not you necessarily blindly telling us. We already have those things established, but we want to get confirmation. We also understand that you may have some nuances, or some other members of the committee may have some nuances about where we should be going, who we should be talking to objectively to get information to ensure that it's a robust type of report. That's really the goal of it. So we'll conduct our kickoff meeting to really lay that out. We also, throughout this project initiation and management phase, throughout the period of performance, we do meetings. We do, whether it's biweekly, whether it's weekly, it's whatever the tempo of the committee or members who are participating want, so we can provide appropriate updates. And then throughout the process, we also ensure quality assurance and quality control to make sure everything is appropriate in there as well as technically sound. Phase 2 now begins the actual depth of information that we're going to be gathering, and that's our interviews, surveys, and documentation review. We use technology to gather anonymous survey data so that we can collate it, see trends, put it into visual graphics and representation, and then start to identify where there are areas that were best practices, because we want to make sure we capture what was done right and what was done well. Things are done well in incidents and disasters. We don't want to always just look at what went wrong, but we want to make sure that we're identifying, here are things we want to continue, or it went well, here's why, here's how we can improve upon it. Then we also want to make sure that we're identifying the best practices that could also lead to areas of improvement. So we'll be able to say, based on these trends, here is what we'll be doing to identify gaps. Here's information to close those gaps. And then we're going to also ask to interview key personnel. And that can be across departments. That can be across the subcommittee here. That can be a lot of different ways that we're able to get information verbally from those who participated in COVID-19 during that response, because we want to get a lot of that great information. Phase 3 is where we draft that plan, that report. This is where we're going to incrementally give you data sets, information. We can check in with you mid-year to see about how the report's findings are coming together so that you have an idea about where we're going. We'll also focus on topic areas throughout this process. We do recommend a few different types of topic areas that deal with looking at underserved communities, rural communities, DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how did that get done throughout the COVID-19 response, if at all. We'll also look at how we incorporated those persons within our Commonwealth who have disabilities or others with access and functional needs. And that can be something as simple as English as a second language or different language proficiencies to college students. We have a lot of universities and colleges in the Commonwealth. And I know personally from friends and family who started college, it was a very interesting thing for those students to be away from home, get locked down, and then figure out what they were going to do. And I know a lot of students ended up leaving universities as a result of it. But how did we get information to them? How did we make sure that they were staying protected and safe when they are brand new adults in a brand new environment? So there's a lot of unique challenges when we're looking at statewide after action reports. And so we want to make sure we look at those things. We also look at businesses and economic development and how did we ensure that we were getting messages out or that we responded appropriately from that government level. And then how did we all work together? So what we do within this report is we identify different topic areas. What we did for the state of Michigan is we did about 11 different focused topic areas. And so we will be grouping them together so that they appropriately fall into the 3 subcommittees of this group so that we can report out on that.
Ms. Murphy, let me just
Yes,
interrupt you momentarily there. A couple of things. Number one, give you a break. You've been going strong here for a bit. And let me just see, we've come to a natural break point. If there's any questions or observations from members of the committee, and I see Senator Boley, put your microphone on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing that I think would be very helpful for the committee is as you identify study areas, much of what is delivered at the local level is really dependent on the infrastructure, staffing, and leadership of our local health departments. Although we have, a state mandate, and technically, with some exceptions, there are some exceptions, employees in the local health departments are employees of the state, but they actually have some additional latitude, and so much of this happened at the local level. So please make sure that that's a study area. And also, Mr. Chairman, if I may make another observation, I think the use of technology should be something we look at as well, because there are varying levels of sophistication in our public health departments across the Commonwealth.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. We will absolutely make sure that those are 2 focus areas and topic areas to look at, not only as individualized focus areas, but I think there's also great value in technology and how that fits across the different focus areas so that we can ensure that we identify where it worked well and where there are gaps. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Senator. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Orrock.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Murphy, from the other studies that y'all have already done, were y'all able to address some of the cultural and political biases that exist out there that were impediments to implementation during the process? And I'm assuming y'all will be able to address that here in Virginia as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you, Delegate Orrock. We have dealt with, obviously, various priorities, political issues, political wants and needs, and what is wonderful about bringing in an outside consultant is that we can remain objective. We do structure our questions, our surveys, our interviews in such a way that it allows for objective responses back to us, even if there's some subjectivity or priorities that we think people might be swaying towards. We take a look at trends in general, and we are able to identify gaps and recommendations that allow for sensitivities. We're not trying to reprimand anyone. We're not trying to point fingers. What we are trying to do is help the Commonwealth move forward regardless of a priority, a political stance, things like that. We will be very honest with the information that we gather, but we will also be very sensitive about recommendations because, again, we're here to help the Commonwealth improve and get better and identifying those gaps. And we have been able to, in other states, write sensitive types of recommendations that have allowed them to implement very good programs or projects or tasks to help them move forward. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman.
Or joint subcommittee, I guess is the right. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Murphy, everything was great, but I want to be specific on in the joint resolution, items 1 through 7, I think that's going to be really important, particularly to the administration, about the agencies that will be providing support to you, how you sort of itemize those in the work groups and things like that. So if we go forward, I think that would be really helpful in the next presentation.
Thank you, Secretary. I appreciate that.
Yes.
What is the appropriate time frame for an after-action review, given the time that has elapsed in the startup of this commission and the turnover in administrations? What's your strategy for dealing with the?
I think that's what she'll be coming to next, is the time frame part of it anyway.
Perfect.
Which is a perfect segue. Thank you, sir.
So what a perfect segue. Thank you for teeing that up. And Ms. Murphy, let's go ahead and move on to that.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. And again, obviously, other questions as we continue through, but I think that's a great question. As of right now, I'm not making any assumptions. So we are under the period of performance of 9 months if we are able to start in January. For other states or statewide type of after-action reports such as this, we recommend no less than 12 months, if not 15 to 18 months. And I understand that the original legislation was asking for about a 20-month period of time for the study, which I absolutely agree with for lots of reasons. Not only, again, as I've stated before, it allows us to get breadth and depth, but it allows us to be flexible with timing. Lots of things happen with states in the Commonwealth. We have different priorities that come up. We also have different schedules. We have sessions. We have things that will be busy at the beginning of the year. And that allows us the flexibility to schedule, send out surveys, re-engage with people, because we are nothing if not dogged about getting a hold of people to answer a survey, to get us in the room or in a virtual room for an interview, because we understand the importance of that. So to answer your question, minimum I recommend is 12 months. However, we are able to be flexible, and if we are unable to get that, then the 9-month period of time, if we're able to start in January, we will absolutely work with. It just means we're going to be more intense. We'll put a little bit more effort into our staffing so that we have more people working on things concurrently. So it just adjusts our staffing posture, but it really doesn't do anything to what we're able to get for you within that 9-month period. But again, preference is 12. Fingers crossed, I think we'll be able to get there. As you can see on the screen here, we break down those phases and tasks, what we'll be doing throughout that period of performance. And if we extend out to 12 months, really what that will end up doing is giving us a little bit more time in phase 2 as well as phase 3. But we want to give more time to gather the data from surveys as well as interviews, and then have time to analyze the data and then put that into our after action report, and then provide various levels of touch base with the segmented subcommittees as well as the subcommittee as a whole. So the last slide I'm going to get into is our subcommittee engagement, and really what we want from those who are involved. It's an iterative process. We really have 4 elements that we would want to talk about and ensure that are there. One is defined roles and responsibilities. One is routine updates. One is clear communication and inclusive decision-making. And this is all from us to you to ensure that you have what you need, you're comfortable with the information that's being provided and the direction we're going. What we don't want to happen is this is the last time you hear from me or any of my team members when they engage with you in your project kickoff, and then 9 months or 12 months or 15 months, we come back to the table, give you a report, and you say this is not what we wanted. We do not do that. We will not do that. But we also will ask for iterative information from you all in decision-making through these means and methods. So through those defined roles and responsibility, we'll give you an idea about where we think it's best for you as subcommittee members to participate with us and what those roles and responsibilities can be and should be, as well as what our role will be with you all. And we'll define the project management team for this project and identify appropriate stakeholders. The sooner we get all of these things in place, the better processes we have, the smoother it will be for the project. I am an emergency manager through and through, as is my team. We are very much, we root ourselves in the value of do the hard work up front so that when the project, the disaster, the emergency comes along, we're operating on all cylinders and we know what we're all doing as a collective team. And that's how we work our projects as well. With these routine updates, we will have either weekly or biweekly check-ins with the appropriate personnel, and that will be determined. We will also provide monthly progress reporting about what we've done in the previous month and what we're planning to do in the upcoming month, as well as any roadblocks or challenges that we would need assistance with. Again, we are active communicators to ensure that every step along the way, we're moving down the same roadway together. We may all have different lanes, but we're moving in one direction together. We want to ensure clear communication, and so that could be phone calls, it could be emails, it could be various methods of communication, such as that with interviews through Teams or in person, and then opportunities for feedback, again, on the information that we're gathering. What I will say is, to remain objective, we won't necessarily adjust data that comes in, right? Because survey data that comes into us is the information that we're taking. However, what we will ask for input and clarity and direction on, are these the right topic areas? Are we getting the type of information through these questions that you want? But again, to remain objective, we want to take that data as is and develop our own trends and recommendations to provide for the Commonwealth. And then that inclusive decision making. So we'll have working feedback sessions with the appropriate staff and personnel, phased editing. So it's not just one large document at once. This is a best practice that we have learned, especially for people who are incredibly busy at various levels and various times of year. We are able to give digestible chunks of information to get feedback on, so it's a lot easier. And then we will conduct the after-action meeting or several throughout the process to ensure that we are all aligned. And that is really how we will do this after-action report study for the Commonwealth to ensure that we're all in line and then we can help better the Commonwealth. It sits near and dear. I currently live in North Carolina, but I'm not very far away, but was in Virginia for about 10 years with my career and still come up here often with the company. So it's very important to me to have people prepared in the Commonwealth. So I appreciate the time. We hope to be your partner working on this, and I'll open it up to any other questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate very much you being here and the preparation and presentation. As you may have noticed, we've had several members of this commission. We appreciate all of you being here who have showed up, and we are one person short of the quorum that we need this afternoon, believe it or not, with the folks that we have for formal action. But I want to open the floor for two things. One is any specific questions specifically for Ms. Murphy on the presentation, and then beyond that, and I think it's a natural segue, any other particular things you'd like to put us on notice or put on the record as we go forward for our study. So let me open the floor for those observations. Delegate Orrock.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, given where we are in the process, I'm anticipating that we're going to meet again probably the Tuesday before session, at which time we can take some action, and anticipating, given that this is the only vendor who has responded, I anticipate what the recommendation is going to be. But at that juncture, one of Ms. Murphy or someone from her tidal basin group could be there specifically to address the timeline and how the subcommittee work would proceed once we're out of session, so that the subcommittee members might know for planning purposes how that specific part of it will work out and the timelines within that.
Yes, sir. Happy to.
Is there anything you wanted to say about that presently, or is that probably better for that Tuesday?
Yeah, we could definitely talk through it on that Tuesday when we know the actual timing as well as what we think the schedule is going to be. It won't change much from what was in this presentation, but I can talk a little bit more about that level of engagement and level of effort that would be needed, because now we're talking brass tacks about when we get started.
Follow up, Delegate.
Mr. Chairman, and additionally, as this is going forward, I presume we will see on the data collection what questions were asked and the population from which they were asked, given the diversity of the Commonwealth between the far southwest to Northern Virginia. As we're coming up with a plan, it may not be a one-size-fits-all, obviously, for the state, but we're going to need to make sure that we're hearing from all of the areas of the Commonwealth, and I presume that's a part of y'all's past practice in other studies you've done. But just for that observational statement.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Delegate O'Rourke. Yes, we absolutely ensure that we get diversity of responses with our questions, and we have that flexibility to ensure that various means and methods to gather that data happens. And depending on how we ensure and finalize the scope of this work department-wide at the government level versus if we want to involve public comment, if we want to include public responses in this, that becomes a very different kind of survey that we would be putting together. And those are all things we have done before and are able to do. And again, one of the greatest things about our team and company is as we really get settled in on what the scope of this project will be and we get into the project kickoff, we're able to adjust as necessary and create those things pretty quickly. Thank you, sir.
Senator Football.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate O'Rourke asked several of the questions that were on my mind, but my, I guess, request is that when you do these draft reports, I think I heard you say in each topical area we were going to see the drafts before we got the complete report. It would be helpful if the stakeholders actually had an opportunity to look at the draft reports too before we get a final report. Because so often people participate in a study or provide feedback in a survey, and then they're totally surprised about how the information is digested or analyzed and conclusions drawn. So it would be very helpful. And I find it helpful when a report also identifies what stakeholders have contributed to the report or what their views were. So,
thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Absolutely. We will ensure that we provide the data results prior to it going into the survey or into the after action report so that there is that good understanding of what the raw data is coming in, how we're starting to look at it. One of the important things is that we do ensure that these surveys can be anonymous, but what we can do is we ask questions on what sort of service areas they come from, what departments they come from, what locations, because what we want to ensure is that people are comfortable enough being honest. And that is one of the ways that we can validate data is to say it is anonymous, but we capture the demographic data that would be really important, which is exactly, yeah, Senator, where I think you were going with that. So I wanted to assure you that we do that. We ensure that that data comes in so that we know where it's coming from and where those topic areas are important to which groups, and that helps us form those recommendations. Thank you, ma'am.
Very good. Any others that, Mr. Hayde?
Just you're curious, in your studies in other states, was the judicial system included in those studies as well?
I believe, don't quote me, I believe in one of our states in Michigan it may have been, but this may be a new one for us to include the judicial system as its own agency and department. And so that's exciting for us, but we will definitely be looking for some guidance and input to ensure that we're capturing that appropriately so that we get the best data, because I understand that there were some challenges with how do we stay open, how do we ensure cases are still able to be heard, and who does what where, and do we change rules? So those are all the really, really good things, not only across the government, but especially within the judicial system, because there are certain things that just don't stop when it comes to these things, and government still has to operate, and that's a part of the continuity plan that the government has. So we will absolutely ensure that we make sure we have the right questions for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Hayde, because I know my co-chair, Senator Survell, has indicated a keen interest in how the court system was affected by this and how we might look at that going forward. Other observations? All right, I'm seeing no other lights, no other requests. So the next thing we have listed on our calendar is public comment, and let me see if there's anyone online. Is there anyone that? Okay. All right. I am informed that is not presently occurring online, and I see a good but sparse audience with us today. That completes the matters that are before us, and I very much appreciate all of you who made the effort in this busy season to be here. Thank you very much for being here.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
It is time for that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
All right, there's a motion to adjourn. Was that Delegate Freitas?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chairman, again, and I apologize for my absence today. I just wanted to confirm, if I could, that the next meeting is potentially going to be January 9th. Is that correct?
We are looking at that. We haven't absolutely set that up, but we're talking about that Tuesday, the 9th, as a meeting to formalize perhaps going forward with this consulting firm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
You bet. Did you have anything else to add at this point, or are you?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that I had a good idea of when the next meeting was going to be, so that I could be there in person.
Very good. Thank you for being with us today. Senator Favola.
Mr. Chairman, I move that our joint study committee adjourn for the day.
Is there a second? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so ordered. We are adjourned.